Welcome to another Imaginal Waypoint video. This week, we are talking about human design gate 45 or through the lens of the gene key 45. And this archetypal theme is moving through the collective experience from around June 8th through the 13th. This video is coming out a little bit late because I am human and life was lifing. So you all know I always want to model my humanity in the midst of sharing with you all. So better late than never. And you'll probably see how this connects to the theme we're working with. So one of the main themes of this transit, this invitation to pause and reflect on our relationship with gate or gene key 45 is about resources. And often when we hear resources, we think money and we think stuff. And that is absolutely part of it. However, I want to invite all of us to sit with a more wide lens on resources. So the idea that resources aren't just money and stuff, but it could be energy, it could be shared wisdom, it could be presence, it could be a number of things. And then deeper than that is how are we relating to resources and how does that connect to our relationship with power? Now, power is a very nuanced, complex energy that we work with as humans. There's personal power, there's agency, there's power over, there's power with. And that's a big part of what I often find myself talking about in relationship work and in leadership work is getting really curious about questioning our relationships with power. Power can also really look like or get collapsed with a desire to control. Could be control ourselves, control our resources, or control others. So there may be invitations this week from life because life loves to show us what we need to see for our evolution, expanded leadership, and purpose around these themes. So the stories we carry around resources, influence, authority, power. So I talk a lot about navigating uncertainty and unexpected challenge. And one of the things that's interesting is when we as humans get scared, we often go straight to trying to control something. And that can get tricky and sticky around power and around resources. So we can give away our power. So that can look like deferring to everyone else's wisdom, waiting for permission, assuming others know better, undervaluing our own time, energy, gifts, and contribution. And that's kind of like the nervous system fawn response, I would say, is sort of it's more of a making nice and going with the flow relationship to fear and stress. So if that resonates, ask yourself, where might I be giving away my authority? Where have I forgotten the value of my resources that I contribute? Whether that's money or energy, wisdom, guidance, whatever it is. Often we can get really clear about what our most precious resource is through the lens of our human design. Your human design type can often show you a bit more about what you're here to contribute to the collective ecosystem. Now, the other side of that more tend and befriend or deferring power is trying to get more, secure more power, control. And that can look like chasing status, trying to control outcomes or others, overworking, competing, measuring your own value or worth through achievement or through those external metrics of hoarding stuff or accomplishments or it's almost like wanting to earn all the gold stars or gold medals. So the interesting thing to sit with there is the story around there being winners and losers. And as an American, we are very steeped in that story of, I think about the Dr. Seuss story a lot when I'm talking about power and how leadership models are shifting and changing. And I think about that Yertle the turtle story of the turtle that just wanted to climb on top of all of the turtles so that he could see all of the land that he could see because what he could see was his in some way. And so there's a spectrum when it comes to these stories that we often learn around power and control in times of uncertainty, instability, or challenge. And I think always with us humans, there's an opportunity to dance more toward the midpoint. So asking yourself if you find yourself really driven to climb and reach and achieve, which is not inherently good or bad. It's just the extreme that can um, it can cause symptoms that aren't sustainable. Is you can ask yourself, where am I trying to prove my value or secure a sense of value from these external measures or these culturally taught and conditioned measures of power and success? And where am I believing that power or my resources, internal or external, are scarce? Because fear often makes us want to constrict. And again, that can be constriction, like making ourselves smaller and compromising our power, or constricting like grabbing, hoarding, holding. And you can imagine if we're talking about thriving and leading through community, that means being more discerning and generous with sharing our resources. And I know that's a both and, right? We can't share what we don't have. So we need to have enough connection to power, enough resources to be well, but finding that line of where we're tightening and gripping rather than bringing whatever we have to give at a moment to the relationships, communities, and ecosystems that matter. So, in healthy ecosystems where there's authentic abundance, everyone contributes. That's part of the work that I do is so rooted in the idea that everyone has a purpose. Everyone has a very unique magic to contribute. And that can be just from being, that can be from doing, that can be from loving and relating in a way, it can be from sharing wisdom. There is an abundance of it's kind of like going to the paint store and seeing all the shades of colors. That there's an abundance of contribution. And when we all contribute what is uniquely ours, everyone then gets to receive in this really abundant way, and there's circulation. A lot of money work, which I've done a ton of because of my own conditioning, is rooted in the idea that currency is meant to move. Currency, the word, is to be in a current of movement, and stagnation is what actually causes an unwellness in the ecosystem. If you think about water, when it pools and sits, it gets swampy. It gets, stuff grows in it that can make you sick. And so the idea is we are all being asked to contribute what is ours to contribute, to generously receive when gifts are offered. And that gift can be time, that gift can be love and care, whatever. It can be money, it can be stuff, right? We're not excluding anything, we're just widening that lens. And when we can receive in this diversity of gifting from our ecosystem, there's shared wisdom, and leadership naturally emerges without all this predetermined hierarchy. It's shared wellness from a place of wisdom rather than control and power-oriented agenda. So it's not this top-down. It's not really even vertical at all. It's much more of a horizontal leadership model. So fear asks, who gets to have the power? And do I have it? And do I need more? Or do I not have enough? That kind of a thing. And wisdom, imaginal intelligence asks, how might power, resources, and contribution flow in ways that actually serve the highest good of the whole? And again, this isn't about martyrdom. I want to be really clear. Sometimes when we think about sharing with community, it gets collapsed into overgiving. We're not talking about that. But I imagine that many of you who are listening to this are unaware of how much you actually have to contribute, how much you sitting in a space with a regulated nervous system and saying nothing impacts the ecosystem, how much you letting your authentic humor be part of a conversation creates a healing moment and spaciousness, how your unique perspective on a situation could shift and recalibrate others' sense of stuckness and an unsolvable problem. There's so many ways to contribute. And I encourage you to sit with, what do people naturally come to me for? What do people naturally appreciate in me? And where or when do I feel most like myself? So much so that it doesn't feel like I'm doing anything special. It took me years to realize that just my presence and the way I see things and reflect things was what people come to me for. I mean, it's literally my job now, but the idea that it's so natural, it doesn't feel heavy, it doesn't feel hard, and that's how we know it's our most natural resource sometimes. So it's about remembering who you are, the value you bring, and it's about being, I want to say, brave and generous in the giving and receiving of that in the world, in the relationships that matter, and knowing that that creates a form of human abundance that I don't believe is honored as much as it should and could be. So, tapping into the abundance that lives beneath the money and the stuff and see what's there, because I make up it's going to be like uncovering a buried treasure.